Obsessed by apocryphal stories of cats being eaten, Trump pussies out of a second debate. You heard what I said. Quote, in the world of boxing or UFC, when a fighter gets beaten or knocked out, they get up and scream, I demand a rematch, I demand a rematch. Well, it's no different with a debate. She was beaten badly last night. Every poll has us winning, in one case 92-8, so why would I do a rematch, unquote. Actually, in the world of boxing or UFC, Trump's campaign would be in intensive care at this hour, and the only demand would be to pull it off life support and end its suffering. And actually, in the world of debates, it was Trump who had demanded additional debates with Joe Biden and then with the vice president. So by his own rules, Trump just proclaimed he lost the CNN debate to the president in June. Still, Donald Duck has the moral force of an intestinal parasite. Mentally, he cannot process defeat. And in the only UFC he competes in, the acronym stands for utter effing cowardice. So he is doing the misquoted advice Senator George Aiken didn't actually give to Lyndon Johnson about Vietnam: declare victory and get out. And we all know what happened to Lyndon Johnson. There are no polls suggesting Trump won the debate. None. There are some online votes, but as Trump could never quite understand why people laughed when he would bring up Putin's 88% approval rating in Russia, he cannot recognize, or more likely cannot understand, the not-so-subtle nuances that separate elections, actual valid extrapolatory opinion polling or ratings, and data produced by letting the same idiot push the same Trump button on the same website, redtua.com, 1,000 times an hour. He can see only two things: his own name and a number attached to it. If the number thwarts his desires, he declares that number to be invalid. It is a perfectly rounded, symmetrical, closed universe. Most people who try to live this way wind up in prison or in an institution or prematurely dead. Trump is the one who slipped through. In other contexts, this is terrifying to ponder. Here, it is just pathetic and hilarious. All of our lives, you and I have heard, he doesn't know the meaning of the word defeat. Well, here we are. This idiot Trump literally does not know the meaning of the word defeat. The rest of the far right, it knows the meaning of the word defeat. The Wall Street Journal editorial board declared Trump lost. She clearly won the debate. Last night, RFK Jr. sounded a similar note. Vice President Harris clearly won. Polymarket polling odds went from 52-46 Trump to 49-49 even. Wagering at Polymarket went to 73% favoring Kamala Harris. Matt Walsh wrote, do you need me to lie to you and tell you this was a brilliant performance by Trump? Would that make you feel better? Trump's surrogate, David Bossie, was asked what was Trump's best debate answer, and Bossie would only say, that's a good question. You're putting me on the spot. Trump campaign hoodlum Corey Lewandowski was asked what was Trump's best debate answer, and he could only say he had so many good answers. A Trump surrogate said, she managed to lure Trump into every trap she set up for him. I wish I hadn't watched it. This surrogate was named Alexei Naumov. He is a member of the Russian International Affairs Council, and he said that on Russian state television. Meanwhile, it took Trump's surrogate and pretend Professor Hugh Hewitt more than 19 hours to come up with this second-day excuse, quote, opinions are settling. Trump was not at his best, but was usually okay, and at some points good, especially on the border and his closing statement. 19 hours to think up some means of pulling his lifeline meal ticket out of the burning Trumpster dumpster, and Hugh Hewitt comes up with, he was usually okay. As we await the first true post-debate polls, it appears only one has been completed since Trump's handlers came out and carried him off with 2 shovels and a wheelbarrow. The poll in question has Harris winning the debate by 53 to 34 and increasing her lead in the election polling from 2 points to 3 points. And that doesn't seem like very much, but the pollster is SoCal Strategies, polling for Red Eagle Politics, and this is literally an online service whose website redirects you to its Twitter account and Gmail address, and it is designed to fabricate good poll numbers for conservatives, and oops, it couldn't even do that here. A TV News Live focus group voted 12-5 that Harris won the debate. The focus group was on Fox News. One member said Trump was so bad he's just like an old suit from like 1987 right now. Accurate. With a little perspective, what is shocking today is not that Trump won't debate her again. It might actually be the first kind of smart thing he's ever done. How could he ever do well enough to erase the impact of Tuesday night, even in the aggregate, even if there were 10 more debates? What is shocking is how unprepared he and the fascists were for the need to find an excuse, to make up a scapegoat, to make up 2 scapegoats. Obviously, they finally found them, ABC News and Disney, and well-known Marxist Taylor Swift. Trump proceeded to go from the debate debacle to a 9/11 debacle in which cameras caught him during a moment of silence. Biden, Harris, Mike Bloomberg, Rudy Giuliani, and even J.D. Vance were all eyes closed, head bowed. Trump was caught looking up into the sky like, ooh, a balloon in the shape of a kitty. Trump also managed to somehow bring Laura Loomer to the 9/11 memorial on 9/11. Laura Loomer, who shared a video insisting, quote, 9/11 was an inside job. How could you go through that debate and it not be the worst moment of your week, Trump? Happily, Trump did not let Nancy Mace or Senator Loomis of Wyoming or the other MAGA idiots come along, the ones who paid tribute to the, quote, 2,996 victims of 9/11. It was 2,977 victims. You only get to their number, 2,996, if you include the 19 terrorists. Nancy Mace and other Republicans wrote, "We will never forget about them." A pre-scheduled Trump fundraising email went out early yesterday. And back to the subject of a scapegoat, the subject line read, "I love ABC News." And it was all about how well he did and how fair the debate had been. And at the same time, Trump was on TV insisting that some they will now take away ABC's news license. Their license to news. There are no news licenses. Even most Trumpists know there are no news licenses. But Trump now, he has to have news licenses.
I think ABC took a big hit last night. I mean, to be honest, they're a news organization. They have to be licensed to do it. They ought to take away their license for the way they did that.
It's a goddamn Monty Python sketch. Hello, I would like to buy a fish license. A what? A license for my pet fish. He is an halibut. You've got a pet halibut? Yes, I chose him out of thousands. I didn't like the others. They were all too flat. You must be a loony. I'm not a loony. Why should I be tarred with the epithet loony merely because I have a pet news license? And speaking of pet halibuts, there's JV. J.D. Vance, who was suddenly the popular, successful one on the ticket, promptly gave that distinction back by addressing the Taylor Swift endorsement and doing another one of those Freudian slips in which he wound up humiliating Trump.
We admire Taylor Swift's music, but I don't think most Americans, whether they like her music or fans of hers or not, are going to be influenced by a billionaire celebrity who I think is fundamentally disconnected from the interests and the problems of most Americans.
Yeah, you go, girl. Tell those Trumpists to rebel against billionaire celebrities who are disconnected from the interests of most Americans. Have a glass of water for Mr. Vance, please. I swear, I am secretly more thankful for that guy than I was for dear old Sarah Palin. A couple of postscripts to the content of the debate that flew by, because no matter how fast you are, you can never grab every $1,000 bill while they are flying around the money booth cash blowing machine. I guess I didn't hear Trump over maybe the sound of my own laughter and his own petulant fury. I didn't hear him on Tuesday admit that he has met with Vladimir Putin since he was ejected from the White House.
I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell.
Oh, Department of Justice, add it to the list, please. Met with Russian dictator about Ukraine invasion. Also, this was special. I'm sorry for the image here, but this was special.
I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader.
Okay, I got two here. Trump, fertilization, as in fertilizer? Or as in he fertilized 3 wives to a total of 4 children? Yeah, I guess he is a leader in fertilization, ain't he? Now let's get back to it must be real, because Trump saw it on TV, and if that admission doesn't summarize his mental problem, I don't know what would. The undocumented immigrants in your jails and why Kamala Harris wants to spend your taxpayer dollars to give transgender surgeries to them and the pet cats and dogs and ducks they are eating in Ohio.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs.
The sounds of a TikTok video from a focus group, a watch party. It's not clear. It's daylight out, so maybe West Coast or a classroom where they're already studying the debate for how bad Trump was. But the laughter, no matter where it came from, the laughter, it was universal. 90 minutes, though, after the debate ended, as people were still shocking and mocking over Trump's claim that Haitian immigrants are eating pets in Springfield, Ohio, Trump posted the video of a woman in a different Ohio city that is 3 hours away from Springfield, who was arrested on August 26th for animal cruelty after she actually did kill and eat a cat in public. As the independent journalist and now pet detective Jacqueline Sweet discovered, the woman's name is Alexis Farrell, possibly Farrell, and she was born in Ohio to American parents, and there is no family connection to Haiti at all. Alexis Farrell's mother went to prison, though, Sweet reports, for her role in a murder cover-up, and Farrell, 27, has been charged repeatedly for drugs and theft. There was also the issue of the local representative of the Nazi group Blood Tribe, who addressed the Springfield City Commissioners last month and told them, quote, "I was head of the anti-Haitian immigration march earlier this month." So the right wing's fairly successful attempt to transform a nut job who ate a cat in Ohio, the place of her birth, where her folks are from, and who is not named Robert F. Kennedy Jr., to turn her into a Haitian immigrant that may or may not be connected to the aforementioned Nazi movement there. The right-wing troll and Ron DeSantis thug, Christopher Rufo, has now offered, quote, a $5,000 bounty to anyone who can provide my team with hard, verifiable evidence that Haitian migrants are eating cats in Springfield, Ohio. Now I'd like to read that line again as Walter Cronkite, if you don't mind. A $5,000 bounty to anyone who can provide my team with hard, verifiable evidence that Haitian migrants are eating cats in Springfield, Ohio. That's the way it is. Wednesday, September 12th, 2024. Walter Cronkite, CBS News. $5,000 bounty to anyone who can provide my team with hard, verifiable evidence that Haitian migrants are eating cats in Springfield, Ohio.
Mr. Rufo, I have a man on line 3. Says he wants to claim the cat bounty. Yes. He says his name is Mr. D. Trump, and they said it on television.
I'm one of the top policy analysts of my generation. Did you know that? Couldn't tell it from this show. Also of interest here, though, how to tie the Tenet Media Russian Stoogegate scandal and Trump and A Handmaid's Tale and Taylor Swift together in one dangerous remark made by one of the alleged right-wing recipients of funneled Kremlin cash. I'll just read the headline from the website Mediaite. Quote, Dave Rubin urges young pretty girl Taylor Swift to reconsider Harris endorsement because Venezuelan gangs might rape or kill her. Unquote. That's next. This is Countdown.
This is Countdown with Keith Olbermann.
Still ahead of us on this edition of Countdown, somebody noted on Twitter X the other night that Lawrence O'Donnell, whose show was spun off from Countdown, was congratulating Rachel Maddow, whose show was, stop me if you've heard me tell you this before, whose show was spun off from Countdown, who I actually hired at MSNBC out of my own pocket. He was congratulating her on her 16th anniversary, and as the X-er noted, it was yet another year Maddow decided to wear her ingratitude like a badge. Which made me think again about how Rachel and I and all the rest of us almost got canceled before her first anniversary. The day NBC almost took MSNBC off the air. Next, in Things I Promised Not to Tell. First, there are still more new idiots to talk about. The daily roundup of the miscreants, morons, and Dunning-Kruger effect specimens who constitute today's worst persons in the world. The bronze, worse, Virginia Republican candidate Hung Cao, the guy who alerted the world in June that the Washington Post was investigating whether or not he'd padded his military resume. Hung Cao is back with a medallion that he is apparently handing out, which reads, I want my senator to be hung. Now, this is stupid and crass, but I might make that joke. Hell, you heard how I started this episode. But I keep thinking, you're talking to Republicans, man. If they think of you as being hung, they mean Mike Pence kind of hung, don't they? Also, Hung Cao has been down in the polls to Tim Kaine for 2 months by from 12 points to 14 points. If he's anything, he's hung out to dry, Cow, am I right? Or more likely, don't have a cow, man. The runner-up to silver, 2 of my least favorite fascists, Trump operative Tim Murtaugh and Trump apologist Byron York. The former Republican Tim Miller, now of the Bulwark, tells this story from the Spin Room Tuesday night. There's no job in politics, he writes, less fun than being the spin room representative for a loser. Trust me, I've been there. You stand underneath a placard with your name, but you raise it only to half-mast in the hopes that the media jackals find some other prey first. Just after Trump's lame spin room performance, I encountered a former Trump spokesman, Tim Murtaugh, a one-time establishment type I knew a little bit. He was huddled closely with one of the Washington Examiner's MAGA content generators, Byron York. I leaned over and observed that Murtaugh had found a friendly voice. Quote, Byron will write you something good, I said. As Murtaugh grimaced at me, York grunted out, F you. Smartest observation by Byron York in like 20 years. But our winner, the worst, Dave Rubin. This is actually pretty disturbing, but pretty much par for the course. You already know the name Dave Rubin. His name came up last week, another propagandist with a lavish lifestyle, and suddenly turns out there are indictments alleging that he is one of the echo chamber's stars who has been getting paid indirectly, maybe unknowingly, being overpaid by a couple of $100,000 a month, and by the Kremlin. Dave has a delivery that is, to put it mildly, mild, which just underscores the banality of his evil. I'll play the tape of what he said, what he seemed to be saying about Taylor Swift. I think it self-explains.
Taylor Swift endorses Kamala Harris on Instagram after the debate on ABC, proudly calls herself a childless cat lady. Elon Musk, who they hate, he saw that and he wrote this: "Fine, Taylor, you win. I will give you a child and guard your cats with my life." So he's mocking, he's exposing the ridiculousness, right? It's like, Taylor Swift, you are a young, pretty girl. Do you know what the gang members from Venezuela do to young, pretty girls? It ain't pretty.
As the media website Mediaite headlined that quote, Dave Rubin urges young, pretty girl Taylor Swift to reconsider Harris endorsement because Venezuelan gangs might rape or kill her, unquote. Well, yeah, pretty much. How the right wing treats women who don't do what they want and what they say they should do. Dave threatens Taylor Swift Rubin, today's worst person in the world! To the number one story on the countdown, and my favorite topic, me. And this is not the anniversary of this event, but I was reminded of it over the weekend, so here goes. Often it happens in television that there are events so traumatic that the cliche about your life flashing before your eyes does not apply, but an equally hackneyed one about your career flashing before your eyes might. The executive producer of our MSNBC newscast Countdown, Izzy Povich, and I were on the grown-up elevator to the office of NBC President Jeff Zucker on the 52nd floor of 30 Rock in New York, summoned there by some garbled message from MSNBC President Phil Griffin about MSNBC being taken off the air. I was mumbling to Izzy sundry imprecations and reminiscences. 8 freaking months is. We spent 12 freaking months forcing them to create Maddow's show. It lasts 8 months. All the crap, prompter practice, getting her over her fears, rockets past CNN, only 8 months of show, and now it's all gone. Izzy reminded me it was not just Rachel's show that was threatened, which was why poor Court Harson from Hardball was already upstairs, along with poor Ed Schultz, and Phil Griffin, and Rachel's executive producer Bill Wolf, and some clown from Morning Joe, and a couple of other MSNBC executives, and us. I know. I did the line from the drunken Irishman from Hitchcock's The Birds, complete with the bad accent. It's the end of the world. I said Jeff Immelt is going to take MSNBC off the air. I didn't need any of my overwrought visions from 2 years earlier of the future of liberal news commentary falling out the NBC window to its death on the rink. This was the real thing. The chairman of General Electric was threatening to open the window himself, throw us out the window himself, and then race down to the pavement to stomp on our dying remains himself. Poor Ed Schultz heard Jeff Zucker say those words, and he had screwed up his face and tilted his head like a puppy hearing a car crash. He had not believed it the first time. He had not believed it the second time. Zucker said it a third time. Immelt is going to take MSNBC off the effing air. Ed Schultz groaned. After weeks of Griffin's coaxing, he had finally just moved from Nebraska to New York the preceding weekend. Yet he was still somehow only the second most strung-out person in the room. You! Zucker shouted at me. You're the smartest one in the room! What the F do we do now? I'll confess I was shaken by this because it appeared for once that Zucker was not being sarcastic. I had never before seen him flush nor flustered. This was a guy who wore fleece in July. Yet now he was beet red and sweating. Sometimes he knew what he was doing, and as his opposition to hiring Maddow had proved, sometimes he didn't know what he was doing. But he always acted as the most confident man in the galaxy. But now he literally had no clue what to do next, and he not only could not ignore my advice, he desperately needed it. This situation and that color on his face were almost worth watching the corporate fascists nuke my network. I asked Zucker to explain what happened. You goddamn well know what happened! Zucker moved towards me, and I stood up, and I told him I would see myself out. He stopped, remembering that he did indeed actually need my help. I'm sorry. I apologize. This isn't rational. This is Immelt. Last week sometime, Bill O'Reilly snapped. He told Murdoch he wasn't going to take any more of what you were saying about him on the air, so he did a piece last night accusing GE of manufacturing the components that have been used in roadside bombs that were built in Iran to kill Americans in Iraq. Which is true. Legally, that's legally true. They found roadside bombs that had like 30-year-old GE transistors or TV tubes from 1954 or something in them. Legally, GE did manufacture components that were used in roadside bombs that were built in Iran to kill Americans in Iraq. So O'Reilly puts this on his effing show as a lead story. And then Fox sent 2 camera crews and this little crap producer from O'Reilly's show, Jesse Waters something, to stake Immelt out and chase him around the GE shareholders meeting in Charlotte. Zucker finally came up for air and I jumped in. Why didn't Immelt have 6 camera crews to stake out the 2 Fox crews and chase them around in Charlotte? I mean, isn't that one of our news hubs, Charlotte? Doesn't Immelt own like 20 camera crews there? He bring a camera crew, you bring 2 camera crews? Zucker started to not like me again. Now you suggest that. Where were you when... All right, never mind. It doesn't matter. Immelt says if there's one more story on Bill O'Reilly about GE manufacturing components for roadside bombs in Iraq, he's taking MSNBC off the air immediately. It'll just be 24 hours of lockup. And I'm fired, and you're fired. And then he pointed at Chris Matthews, producer. And Matthews is fired. And he pointed at poor Ed Schultz. And you're fired. And Ed whimpered. So, smartass, what the F do we do? I feigned all the nonchalance I could feign. If I could have lit a cheroot by striking a match on the sole of my boot, I would have. It's manageable. But, Jeff, why is Immelt so worked up about what O'Reilly said about him? Only O'Reilly's nutjob viewers actually believe any of that crap. Nobody at GE, nobody investing in GE could possibly believe we're building components for roadside bombs. Zucker inhaled deeply. Immelt's mother believes it. All the heads in the room turned toward the president of NBC. Mrs. Immelt, back in Cincinnati, is a devoted Bill O'Reilly viewer. Watches him every night. Sees this, calls him, says, Sonny, why are you manufacturing components that were used in roadside bombs built in Iran to kill Americans in Iraq? I had not expected that. I said to Zucker, so he'll really burn, what, $200 million a year in profits? Just between Rachel and me? Because his mom watches Bill O'Reilly? Zucker got angry again. You bet your effing ass he will. Now, you said it was manageable. How? How the F do we manage it, Olbermann? Just a minute. How old is she? Zucker summoned all his annoyance. How old is who? Immelt's mother. How old is she, Jeff? Zucker was really annoyed. How the F should I know? You're missing the point. I had him really worked up, nearly to the boiling point. It was great. Guess. Zucker spluttered. I don't know. He's in his mid-50s. She's got to be 80, 90-something. I stifled a fake yawn. Yeah, you're right. Probably closer to 90 now that I think of it. So the problem is, she watches O'Reilly. She tells him what's on Fox, what O'Reilly's saying about GE. Well, I think you have a simple solution. I'd say the first thing you do is you send over a couple of big guys to her house and you pull the freaking cable out of the wall. Zucker actually gasped. My producer, Izzy Povich, unsuccessfully stifled a laugh, and I saw Rachel crack a smile. Zucker regained himself. This isn't funny, Olbermann. I crossed my legs. Oh, it's a little funny. And anyway, it's not essential. If the problem is Immelt is threatening to take the network off the air because O'Reilly is avenging himself against me by attacking him and attacking GE, the short-term solution is easy, and in fact, it is manageable. The long-term solution, that's not easy, and that's not manageable, but the short-term one, that's simple. Rest of this week, next week, maybe the week after that even, we just don't mention Fox News on MSNBC. Something resembling a smile crossed Zucker's face. It made him look a little less like a lizard person and more like a monkey with glasses. You do that? Forever? No. Not forever I would not do that, I said. To buy us time? Yes. But remember, who was it who was in my office last winter telling me that I should go on the air and just to F with Fox, I should ask why Rupert Murdoch was still running a huge international media company like News Corp, despite all the reports that he's suffering from dementia, even though there haven't been any reports that he's suffering from dementia? For everybody's sake here, who was that again who told me to do that? Zucker's goodwill was gone again. Obviously, that was me. What's your point? My point is, we built this new brand of ours organically on a couple of themes, a couple of statements of principle, and one of them is, to use your words, just to F with Fox. If we don't F with Fox for a couple of weeks at the start of the summer, who's going to care? Who's going to notice? But like after 2 weeks, 3 weeks, our viewers are going to notice, and the TV writers are going to notice, and then the crap will hit from every direction you can think of. Temporary freeze on mentioning Fox and mentioning O'Reilly and mentioning Murdoch, fine. Permanent freeze? Might as well let Immelt turn us off in the morning after all. I don't think Zucker actually heard the last part about Immelt turning us off after all. The lack of color was returning to his face. Okay, breathe, he kept saying to himself. Breathe, okay, breathe. He looked at me and nodded. He pointed at Izzy and at Phil Griffin and me. You and you and you and I. We will talk tomorrow, maybe tonight, and we'll all meet again next week. Until then, nothing about Fox, anybody. Are we clear? Nothing on the air about Fox. Silence in the room. Then the assorted noises of people rising mixed with attempts to resuscitate poor Ed Schultz. Somebody, Matthew's guy Harson, I think, was almost at the door out of Zucker's office, an office so big that it was, to steal the Ring-Lardner line, the size of the Yale Bowl, but with lamps. And then a voice spoke up quietly but firmly. Excuse me. It was Rachel Maddow. Excuse me. I will not have the content of my show dictated by any corporations, including the one I work for. Remember, this is June 2009. She still felt that way then. And especially one I don't work for. I will walk out first. I cannot have the audience wondering what else I have not told them. I don't do a lot about Fox on my show, but if there is a story about Fox, I will not honor this freeze. I will report that story, and if I'm prevented from reporting that story, I will leave. Whereupon, she left. Zucker barked. Phil, Olbermann, Izzy, stay. When the rest of the room had cleared, Zucker blew air out of his mouth as if it were smoke. He gestured violently at me with his right arm. I told you she was a mistake. You didn't listen to me. I told you. Now she's your problem. All of this is your problem. Get her back on the reservation or else. Now I had run out of goodwill and jokes. Oh, I'll get her back on the reservation, Jeff, but if you think this is my problem, just think about what happens if he really does take us off the air, or if it just gets out that he threatened to take us off the air because his mother didn't like what Fox said about him. That's my problem? That's your problem, and it's the problem of the CEO of the frickin' 6th largest corporation in the world who makes his business decisions involving hundreds of millions of dollars of profits based on what his mother says. At this point, Phil Griffin managed to pull Zucker away, and Izzy and I made for the door, saying nothing until we were in the elevator. Finally, she asked, what are you going to do about Rachel? I looked straight ahead. I have depth perception issues while traveling forward, backwards, up, or down. The F if I know what I'm going to do about her. But I got an idea. mean, the only person she was really talking to in there was herself. This isn't a brand new surprise success for her anymore. This is successful. This is what, 9-10 months? She's successful. She said she was once a dancing cell phone outside a cell phone store outside of Boston. She ain't going back to that. I went to talk to Rachel about an hour later and reassured her. I mentioned that powerful as Fox was, they were not going to be able to re-invade Iraq by themselves. And unless she moved it way closer than it had been, nobody would cross her censorship line. And I said, just give me as much time as the French government took before fleeing during the Nazi advance in 1940. I said, give me, 33 days? Give me 33 days. If we aren't back where we were this morning, we can both quit on the air. I mean, that'd be fun, right? 3 nights later, well after midnight on a Friday, my NBC-issued BlackBerry buzzed with a quick email from Rachel Maddow. Hey, she wrote, don't necessarily quote me because I'm really drunk, but just make the best deal you can for us. I trust you. We don't need to do Fox all the time. I never do Fox stories anyway. I just had to say that, and this is the best platform we will ever have. Well, she was right, at least for the time being. A couple of weeks later, I had to sneak in a script that blasted Fox, and at 10:30 at home that night, I got a call from a drunken Phil Griffin shouting into the phone, I have a family! Zucker had to go meet with Roger Ailes secretly inside 30 Rock, and I hope they remembered to clean the room afterwards, and Immelt even had to meet with Murdoch. And then happily, some idiot GE executive decided to boast to the New York Times about getting us little talent children under control and a big deal with the executives over at Fox and how they'd settled everything, which blew up the whole deal instantly because the moment the deal went public, NBC looked so stupid, and even NBC News was now risked. The only point of the whole thing was to keep the Immelts and the Zuckers and the Griffins and the Aileses from throwing us and our little island of liberal commentary out of that window at 30 Rock. But as Rachel Maddow and I would be constantly reminded in the ensuing years, 30 Rock has a lot of freaking windows. I have no doubt that man Immelt would have taken the network off the air. His ego was that fragile. Happily, he was replaced by people from Comcast whose egos are even more fragile. I've done all the damage I can do here, but they've not done all the damage they can do yet there. Not yet, anyway. Thank you for listening. We're now back to 5 episodes a week, posting nightly just after midnight Eastern. Once again, there is a Monday countdown. And thank you kindly for joining in on the live thing after the debate on Tuesday, which cleared, 125, 150,000 views, plus the podcast numbers. Thank you. Brian Ray and John Philip Chanel, the musical directors of Countdown, arranged, produced, and performed most of our music. Mr. Chanel handling the orchestration and keyboards. Mr. Ray, as ever, on the guitars, bass, and drums. And it was produced by TKO Brothers. Our satirical and pithy musical comments are by the best baseball stadium organist ever, Nancy Faust. The sports music is the Olbermann theme from ESPN2. It was written by Mitch Warren Davis, courtesy of ESPN Inc. Other music arranged and performed by No Horns Allowed. My announcer today was my friend Stevie Van Zandt, and everything else was pretty much my fault. So that's Countdown for this, the 55th day until the 2024 presidential election, the 1,339th day since convicted felon Dementia J. Trump's first attempted coup against the democratically elected government of the United States. Normally, and heretofore, I've mentioned using presidential immunity, using the mental health system. Now I say, let's just use the election or get him to do another debate to keep him from doing it again while we still can. The next scheduled countdown is tomorrow. Bulletins as the news requires. Until the next one, I'm Keith Olbermann. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, and good luck.